Welcome back to another episode of 1.73 Mission Over Measure. Today we have Tony Colangelo. Tony, thanks for being here. I'd love to get started by talking about your background a little bit. Where you came from, what you're doing now for work, and just kind of talk to us about who you are.
Sure. I'm originally from New Jersey. I was born and raised in New Jersey. I lived there for 45 years, minus the 4 years I was in the military. And I met my current wife in Atlantic City at a trade show. She was living in Detroit. Briefly, we lived together in Detroit. And then she's originally from Idaho, a small town in Idaho called Castleford. It's a population of about 90 people. It's a farming community. And we were, both out of work. And she said, "Hey, I want to go back home." So that's how I ended up in Idaho back in 2015. Let's see, I did 40 years in the military from 1984 to 1988. Spent the majority of my time in Wertheim, Germany, which, at 18, 19, 20 years old, you don't appreciate that you're in Europe because you're too busy doing other things that you probably shouldn't be doing. But spent my 4 years there, got out, knocked around for a while job-wise. I wasn't really sure what I wanted to do. I've always been involved with technology, tearing things apart when I was a kid. So I migrated, I was drawn to those types of jobs. So I worked in closed-circuit TV installations for a while, worked for the railroad, worked for Amtrak in their signal department, again, technically inclined. Got injured while I was on the job. Laid around for about a year, not really sure what I was going to do. Went back to school for electronics and computer technology, and I was taking a programming class in that curriculum, and a light bulb went off in my head because I'm like, my God, these things are stupid. They're ones and zeros or yeses and nos. That's all they are. Even what we're doing today at its base, it's just a bunch of transistors.
Like the technology's dumb?
Yeah, the technology's dumb.
Interesting.
It's very dumb. Because if you take it back to your basic rudimentary processors, because I think I had written that in your questionnaire, I learned how to program on an 8086 processor. So those old 8086 processors, and you've probably seen them, they've got a bunch of pins and they go into a socket. Well, there is a sight glass on those that's covered up with black tape. When you take that off, to wipe those, you flash them with a flashlight. Hence the term flash memory.
No
That's
way.
That's where the term came from. So when you get down to the basic concepts of what computers are, you're like, oh, this thing's a toaster. It's shame on me for calling them that today because they're not that today. But back then, they're all built on the basic building blocks of that. I mean, DOS 622, which was a programming language that Microsoft built Windows on, that shell still exists in Windows today. Those commands are still there. You can open up a command prompt, and you can still do those same basic commands that you did back in the 80s and the 70s. So to bring it back to the point I was trying to make, once I realized that, I was scared to death of a computer. I wouldn't touch it. Would not touch them. And then I was briefly living in Virginia, and that's the segue to the bowling story, but we'll go back to that. I was briefly living in Virginia. I was working for AMF, which was American Machine and Foundry. They're now AMF Corporation, AMF Cubica. But I met a friend of mine. We're still friends to this day, 30 years later. He worked in IT. He sold me my first computer for $400. And I still remember the desktop. It was the old Cougar desktop wallpaper that was on the screen. And that was Windows 95. Now fast forward. And then once I got into that in school, I was building PCs and doing everything else that a typical IT nerd does, once they get sucked into it. And, fast forward to 2025. I'm still in IT. I now have 9 direct report employees that report to me. Um, it's funny to look back at my pathway to get where I am today, and I see the same struggles from the guys that work for me today. They do. I can see where same questions, same concepts. They have a problem grasping concepts at a time, and it's not that they're not intelligent. They just haven't been exposed to it. It's like the first time you cook a meal as a bachelor. I'm sure the smoke alarm goes off. That's just the way it is. So you crash and burn and you learn. Crash, burn, and learn. I think that's probably a good motto. At least that's the way I live. Anyway.
Well, it provides some great lessons along the way.
Oh yeah,
right?
I've stubbed my toe a lot in my life. And you move the coffee table that you're stubbing your toe on, and then you forget that you moved it, and you stub your toe again. So, I think the goal in life is to not have bruised big toes at the end of it all, and remembering that pain, you're like, oh man, that hurt. I'm not going to do that again.
Yeah.
And I think in life that's the same way. I'm like, look, I'm divorced twice. I've learned from both of those marriages. One was very short. It was when I was in the military. Worst mistake in the world for the two of us, because we got married because our parents told us not to. Remember that, Henry. Our parents told us not to do that. We did it anyway. And sure enough, guess what happens? They're like, hey, that's not going to end well. They were right. They were absolutely right. My second wife, we were together for 20 years. We just grew apart. That's just the way it happens. And my current wife, Juliet, and for all intent and purpose, it's going to be my last wife. We just fit. It makes sense. But I wouldn't have known that if I hadn't had those other two and the relationships in between. It just made sense. We met, I think, let's see, I met her in October of 2014. I moved to Detroit February of 15. We moved back to Idaho June of 15. So if you think about that window. And then we got married September 1st of 2016, and we've been married ever since. We just knew.
Gosh, that's so great.
Yeah, we just knew.
Yeah, and it's one of those where, Natalie and I've been married, oh my gosh, to do that, let's see, 23, 26 years, 27 years.
Mm-hmm.
I should probably know that, Tony. How many years?
It's okay.
Since 1998.
I won't tell her.
Yeah, right. It's been awesome, right? Like we've got awesome kids. Henry is fantastic. Our daughter Georgia is great. But there's, we were talking kind of before we hit the record button today about, there's like light sides and dark sides, or there's chaos and order. And it's interesting because I have this conversation on a regular basis with friends, like frustrated about why do bad things happen, and not to try to solve all the world's problems, but it's like, yeah, but if they didn't happen, would you really be grateful, or would we have access to gratitude if those poop storms didn't happen on a regular basis? And so it turned out the way it did for you, and yet what a gift that you and Juliet met, right?
Yeah, we talk about that a lot. It's funny. My wife got, and at this part of it's not funny, but it is overall. My wife got diagnosed with lung cancer back in 2020, 3 years in 2022. And anybody that's had to deal with that type of diagnosis, first off, you're angry, then you're scared, and then because everything's an unknown from that point on. But we've looked at it we've had the conversation that we've had, and we've had a lot of conversations, a lot of tears, the whole spiel. We're both okay with whatever happens. We both agreed that we're not going to live in fear. We're going to go do what we want to do until the situation changes. That's just the way it is. And that's the funny thing about, cancer. Some people look at that as like, oh my God, that's just terrible. Yes, it is. It is terrible. But if it consumes you right away and you don't allow yourselves to continue to live your lives, it's no different than getting a cold or anything else. You have plans, and then one day you're like, oh man, I don't really feel good today, and it blows up the plans. Cancer is no different. It's just, you know what? It's like the Death Star. I'll use it that way. It's looming in the sky, and for whatever reason, they haven't pulled the trigger yet. So you just hope to keep it at bay, and her long-term prognosis is 5 to 7 years, but we know people that with her type of cancer that are still alive 20 years later. Everybody's different. It's just our reality. It's our life. We could be sad about it, but I don't see any point in that. Neither does she. So we've done more traveling in the last 3 or 4 years than we did in our whole time together. So.
Yeah. And Tony, like, it's interesting, like when you're up against odds like that, there's probably a direction. I know I've gone down a path that isn't real supportive. I get down, frustrated. I'll just say it this way. Like I play a really good victim. Just ask my family.
Yeah.
But, as you're sharing, I was thinking like, well, what is it for you or for you and Juliet that's, I don't know, it's like, is there something bigger than both of you that says like, I not necessarily what you said, but what I heard was like, this is a circumstance that we're going to work. We've got this circumstance called cancer.
Yeah.
But it's not holding us back. What is it like? What is it for you guys that just is bigger, better, stronger story than that?
I don't know. My wife's an insurance agent, and she deals with people's, loss on a weekly basis, sometimes daily basis. To me, what's more devastating, a cancer diagnosis or your house burned down? I don't know how you I don't know how you put those on scales and say, okay, this is worse than that. Because my wife overall is pretty healthy. She's in a good spot. She just had a call last week. Someone had a total loss. Their house burned down. Now, would I want to trade what we're going through with that? No, I don't. So when you ask what I think everybody's dealing with something. You guys are, we all are. And who am I to say, hey, our situation is worse than what you guys are dealing with? Her dad just lost a friend of his, diagnosed with the same type of cancer my wife has. He didn't last 6 months. My wife's going on 3 years. So when you say, is there a bigger picture? There's always a bigger picture. For me, I equate it to, I look at it this way. When her mom passed away, it was sudden and it was scary because she had a massive heart attack. Somebody found her. That was awful. A year later, her grandmother dies on the same day. A year later, different. It was hers was a good death because she had no quality of life anymore. So she moved on. But all of those things, the world kept going.
Yeah.
And that's the way I look at it. The world keeps going. You know what? People die every day. People are born every day. People lose pets. But the world continues to spin, and the mechanisms that keep the world operating continue to go. So I think that's probably the best way for me to describe it. Don't get me wrong. I get down. My wife gets down. We do. We have moments of melancholy that, we just get in a dark place. This individual that passed away from our dad's side of the, friends, it was sobering for us because it's like, geez, the guy, he was 72 years old. He had lived his life, but it's tough. I mean, because it brings front and center. It's like, okay, everything's okay. And then it's not.
Yeah.
I don't know if I answered your question, but I think that's It's
Well,
a
I
big
think,
world, and we're small. So
yeah, I think it is easy to have almost a race to the bottom when tragedy strikes. You try to race to who is, am I the absolute worst victim possible? Am I getting the
well,
worst of it? And, maybe people think there's some sort of not comfort, but distraction in that, in the
hmm,
comparison of it all. And I think that happens without the gratitude to hold on to in life. If you don't if you don't stay grateful in spite of your suffering, you end up racing to the bottom and trying to figure out who has it worst, and now it's a competition to who has it worst. I mean, that's not in all cases, but I do think that's a tendency a lot of people seem to do, is to become spiteful and
hmm,
say, oh, I have it worse, so somehow I'm better, or like your situation is not valid because I have it worse. So, it's there's a tendency for that, but I think gratitude solves that problem by just saying, it what's happened has happened, but look at all we have left. We still have
yeah,
so much. You guys are able to travel, you guys are, able to still live your life, and having the gratitude to combat the spitefulness, I think, is really important.
yeah, yeah. At least for us, and we do the comparison thing. My wife she has three sons. They're all in their own. They're doing their own things, and we've said to them, when they get down, it's like, hey, and I hate to say this, but like, hey, you didn't get diagnosed with cancer today, did you? And
Yeah.
they're like, well, no. I'm like, then be quiet.
Yeah.
Um, just it's not to be spiteful. It's to, hey, your situation could be a lot worse.
Mm-hmm.
So just keep some perspective, please.
Well, it's interesting. I like how you put that, Tony, because one of the questions I was curious about
Hmm.
is how do you, I'll start with you first. I don't want to, certainly don't want to insinuate that you would speak for Juliet, but like,
No, and I wouldn't.
how do you define winning?
Oh, it's funny you bring that up because I'm all about winning. Um, I think Derek Jeter said it best. Um, there's a great interview with him from the guy that owns Steiner Sports, the memorabilia company. And he asked him a question. He's like, hey, what's worse? 97, you make it to the playoffs, you lose to the Cleveland Indians, or 98, 99, 2000? He's like, his answer is, how do I grade winning?
Hmm.
He's like, if I'm going to race you down the street, I want to beat you. That's his mentality.
Yeah.
So when you ask me, winning to me is, hey, I scored one more run than you. I knocked down one more pin than you. Um, I live a life that, if someone puts it under a microscope, there's a lot of bumps and bruises and, you know, potholes. But at the end of the day, can you trust what this person says to you? And is he going to do what he says? Um, I think I put that in the questionnaire. It's not what
Hmm.
you say, it's what you do. Um, to me, that's winning. Follow through. It's follow through. Follow through on what you said you were going to do. Because if you can't trust a person's word, that's to me that's it. If you say you're going to do something, or you're going to take care of something for me, and I find out after the fact, I have to go back and redo what you did because you didn't do it in a manner that in IT it's called a go back, or when you triage a problem. When you triage the problem, it's no different than in combat. You are identifying what problems can be fixed quickly and what problems can wait. Um, so it's the same thing. If I fix an issue today, perfect example, the microphone on my PC. If in the middle of all this, the microphone, you know, you know, dies, or the sound quality gets bad again, then I didn't fix the problem.
Hmm.
And to me, that's what winning is that you identify a problem, you fix it, to the best of your ability. If you have problems where you need assistance, you ask for help. I think that's probably the biggest thing. That's another aspect of winning. It's okay to not know how to do something. Don't BS someone. Just say, "Hey, I don't know how to do this." To your point about you guys just doing these, starting this podcast. There's a lot of people out there that, Joe Rogan, great podcaster. Mike Rowe, another great podcaster.
Mm-hmm.
And I would say to you, you want to see a tandem and how they work? Those two guys, the way I heard it, that's a great one. But again, Mike Rowe, when you look at those people, Mike Rowe, he's all about accountability. Hey, are you accountable for what you say?
Yeah.
Are you accountable for what you do? So for me, that's winning. It's not that. Don't get me wrong. My wife and I, we have a nice house. We've got 3 cars in the garage. Even with her diagnosis, we're healthy. Things are good. Our grandchildren are healthy. Our kids are all healthy. That's not a bad situation to be in.
No, that sounds like winning on a whole bunch of different levels, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. So, I'm compelled to ask the opposite question.
Mm-hmm.
And at the risk of it just being completely obvious, the answer being totally obvious, like what's losing?
Oh. Huh.
Or how do you define that?
Back to the Derek Jeter quote. How do you define losing? You didn't win. It's that simple.
Yeah.
Like I bowl competitively, not as much as I used to. When I'm on the lanes, I'm not a very nice guy because I want to win. I think anybody that has a competitive nature, be it in business, sports, life, whatever, I want to win. I want to beat you. That doesn't mean I want to beat you into submission or I want you to fail. I just want to be that 1 second better, or that 1 pin better, or that 1 base hit better that gets the winning run in. That's because people said to me last year when the Yankees, "Hey man, you should be happy they went to the World Series." Yeah, they lost. Who cares? You might as well not have made it. If you're going to go all that way and blow it, like I was in the stands when the Tigers won the 2012 American League Championship. I was in Detroit, and I crucified my friends from Detroit when they went and got swept. I'm like, are you kidding me? Really? Shame on all of you. You should hang your heads in shame. So, yeah, it's pretty basic. I think your assumption about the question. Loss is such an interesting term, because I think everybody deals with loss every day somehow.
Yeah.
So, listen, if cancer eventually takes my wife, yes, I lost her to that cancer, but I'm extremely happy for everything that we had prior to that. So yeah, it'll suck, but I've got a lifetime, not a lifetime, but our lifetime together. I have a lifetime of things to fall back on and memories. So, yeah, I don't like. I'm bowling a tournament this weekend. I'd like to win it. When you lose, you take that moment where you reflect on what happened. How are you going to get better at it? And you just move forward and you say, hey, you know what? You pull yourself up and you jump back into the fight. I think that's how you deal with loss.
Yeah, and it's not always the way. Well, I would say it this way. The namesake of this podcast, in terms of the 1.73, was, man, where I grew up. It was, there's 2 things. Number one, like you had to finish school and you had to go to college. Like that was it. There was no negotiating.
Yeah.
So, basically, if everybody does the math, for which clearly by that GPA you can tell I'm probably not an expert, is that like I probably shouldn't even have graduated. Right? I mean, it's like I don't know what Illinois state requirements were way back in the in the 80s, but it was like, hey, you probably shouldn't have gone. And I got to tell you, it was that was losing. That was like a tough loss to move beyond, because there was so much judgment that came with it.
Oh,
and
yeah.
it's one of those where, fortunately, thank goodness, like life seems to have, I say it this way, they're still losing, they're still winning, there's still there's still judgment put on things. But at the end of the day, it's almost like, rather than playing based on somebody else's yardstick, or playing the game based on somebody else's yardstick, it's been interesting to spend more time investing in and formulating my own, or our own as a family, and saying like, all right, that's actually a better measuring stick to use than the one that others might put on you. Now, I'm not a bowler, and my guess is, what, 300 is a perfect game?
Yes.
Okay. So like, you probably don't want to be like on your team, or the person on your team that's like consistently bowling probably under 150, 200.
So 200 is par if we use golf terms.
Okay.
200 is par in bowling. Last night I shot 623 for 3 games in the league. So
Okay.
I averaged over 200.
Yep.
But I missed 7 spares.
Yeah.
So is that a successful night? No, it's not.
Yeah.
Did I beat the guy I was bowling against? Yeah, twice, but he was not very good. So you don't bowl the person, you bowl their score. That's what you do.
Interesting.
It's no different than when when the Yankees and Dodgers play in the World Series, you're just trying to score more runs. You need to score more runs. It doesn't matter what team you're playing against. And if you watched how the Yankees lost that, they created so many opportunities for the other team to beat them. Of course they were going to lose.
Yeah.
And it's no different than it goes back to winning and losing in the question that you asked me earlier. If I don't do my job on a daily basis where I work to the best of my ability, something is invariably going to come back and bite me in my rear end because I didn't do my due diligence. And that's what I instill to all of the people that report to me. Hey, 2 things. Don't ever put me in a position where I say I don't know as a leader, because then if I don't know, that means I'm not paying attention. And the second thing is, don't ever be afraid to not ask for help. Ask for help. Those are my only 2 rules. And I think that goes in any scenario. So when I say 200 is par in bowling and I shot over that for the night, I don't consider last night a success.
Say more about you bowl their game, not the person. What do you mean by that?
Well, because they're putting up a score. If you get involved with the person, Juan Soto is a perfect example. He makes pitchers angry because of his shuffle. Instead of just focusing on the glove and the catcher, pitchers focus on the fact that guy's down there at home plate dancing, which is why he gets thrown at. Because if a pitcher throws at him, guess what? That means that hitter's winning. He's winning. He's gotten into that person's head. It's that simple. So, Kevin Costner, for love of the game, he always used that term, clear the mechanism. And that's what that is. You don't focus on the person batting. You don't focus on the person throwing the ball against you. Because what happens if they get lucky? Now you're in your head, well, geez, I just threw a really great shot and I didn't get lucky like that. I bowl with a guy on my team that's like that. He gets so frustrated with how other people are bowling, how they're carrying. It's like, don't pay attention. Just stay within yourself and do the things that you need to do.
Is it almost competing against yourself rather than who you're, like, if you know that you are capable of beating their score, are you then competing against yourself to know that you can beat it, or knowing, like, competing? I don't know if I'm making sense, but you like trying to stay more internal than external when you're competing.
Well, yeah, it's internal. And if you speak to some coaches, a perfect game is 12 shots. So if you treat each individual frame as an individual game, your goal is to go throw a strike every single time. So Okay, I threw a strike. I threw a double, so that's two in a row. Well, I just threw a bad shot, put up a split. That's one frame. But if you look at the overall, um, I still can shoot 200 even though I have that one frame. So that's the goal for me. I want to shoot 200 every game. I want to shoot better than 200. Um, when you're bowling match play one-on-one, it's a little different because you want to get into that person's head that you're bowling against. Like Juan Soto, he wants to get into that pitcher's head. That's why he does what he does. He wants the pitcher to get angry.
Yeah.
And that's his game. He's winning. Derek Jeter, unflappable. You look at guys, there's guys on the Pro Tour right now that everything in their brother affects them. And it affects their ability to perform. So if I get frustrated at a client, if I have a difficult client, am I supposed to be angry with them? Maybe, but I still have. I say this to people all the time. The customer's not always right, but the customer's always the customer. Always. So, hey, they pay the bills. So, do the best that you can. Try and give them what they're asking for. But at the end of the day, if they say, hey, we want you to do it this way, and you give them all of the caveats and all of the reasons why you shouldn't do it, you still do it. And then if it blows up, you fix it. It's pretty simple.
Yeah. Tony, you mentioned, I think you said you got nine people that work with you or for you?
Yeah. I had 4 and then I picked up 5 because I just picked up a pretty big client in Connecticut.
Gotcha. What are, this maybe more kind of pragmatic question, if you will.
Mm-hmm.
What are some of the measures that work for you and your team that tell you guys like we're winning on a regular basis?
Well, for us, it's CSAT, which is customer satisfaction.
Okay.
We survey after every incident, after every case. So to put that in perspective, one of my guys got a 4.17 out of 5. Listen, 4.17 is still pretty good. But we diagnose those. We go through, okay, what are the reasons why you only got a 4.17? We also use AI now that listens to the phone calls and can tell whether they asked for the person, they said the person's name, they mentioned what the issue was with the case that they're calling about. So all of those things. So, it's funny. I love AI. I know AI scares a lot of people. It's not perfect, but it's an exceptional tool to be able to identify gaps. So, it's like I'll just say Pete. Hey, Pete, you didn't introduce yourself to the client when you got on the phone call. Oh man, I'm sorry. I'll do it next time. The nice thing about the AI feature is we don't have to listen to calls anymore. It listens for you, and it gives us a basic score. It gives us a scorecard, or to use the school analogy, it gives us a report card on what they're doing and what they're not doing. And then what we do is we'll triage it with the technician, and we'll go through it, and we'll listen to the call together, where they can see. They'll be like, "Oh, I really thought I asked that question." Well, you may have thought that you asked the question, but you didn't. So, for us, it's CSAT. It's absolutely customer satisfaction. We want everyone to give you a 5. That's what we want. 5s are the best.
Yeah, I'm super glad that it wasn't CSAT back in the early 80s for me in high school. What are some of the other side of the coin?
Yeah.
What are some of the measures that do more damage than good? Like in the world of work with your team, kind of in that environment, like either maybe some of the measures that either, your current organization places, you've placed before, your teammates place on themselves.
Well, I worked for an event center before I started working with Synoptek, and we had a term called wowgistics. You know, you need to wow the customer. And from the customer point of view, we did a great job. We did a fantastic job. But from a work environment, it was terrible. My point is culture, I think, and micromanagement and all of those things. Everything that is negative or derogatory, I don't think anybody likes to be watched over. I just don't. Not even you guys. I mean, you know, people are going to watch your podcast and they might have some critical comment. And one of two things are going to happen. You're going to listen to the comment. You're going to be like, okay, that's a valid comment. Or you're going to say, and to not quote anybody, that person has no clue what they're talking about because they're uninformed. Those are the only two things really. They don't have a clue. And I have guys that get frustrated, and I tell them, don't get frustrated. Nobody died. The business is still making money. For me, it's culture. I think culture is probably the most detrimental thing for any business. Because think about all the companies that talk about their culture. And then when you talk to the employees, if they're truly honest, there are some great companies out there. I'm sure there are. There has to be. But I think in every single company that has great culture that you're going to find some people that don't appreciate the culture that they're in.
Yeah, it's funny how in the work that we do so frequently, there's an issue, an obstacle, a roadblock that comes up.
Mm-hmm.
And one of them was, I know yesterday I was with an engineering firm, and one of the things we talked about, we were talking about AI, and one of the leaders was sharing how I'm not really sure what to do with these young developers that come in, or the newer developers that come in, because now what we would train them on to be able to code, like basically their jobs like today almost obsolete given where levels sophistication of AI is. By the way, not an AI expert in any way, shape, or form, development or engineering expert in any way, shape, or form, but it's like my job is to like listen to these conversations. And it comes back to, there's a debate on how much AI can do versus otherwise. And I was thinking like, well, what is it that has them, what kept coming up was the fear around it. And I thought that's actually another, AI happened to be the topic yesterday. And by the way, there's nothing wrong with this team. They're not doing anything. They're not doing anything wrong. But it's like the fear comes up around all the things that we wake up, the questions that we wake up with, the fears we wake up with every single day. And it's almost like I imagined this leader was getting concerned, like, boy, if this new technology decimates my teams, what's the role for me? And like, how would I actually manage? How would I measure the work that I'm doing? It's really interesting because my point, Tony, is so much comes back to like, I'll put it in the context of culture, but like, how are people operating? How are they communicating? What are the standards that they're using to be as healthy, as smart and strong and fast as possible? And it struck me as like, yeah, the topic was about AI, but this was really like, they were really wrestling with a human and cultural issue more than they were a technology issue.
Well, a couple of points. When you talk about the fear factor, we live in a world where Terminator's a movie.
Right.
So you've got that. And that was AI, became self-aware. Here's the thing though, go back to my original comment about me going to school and saying, hey, these machines are stupid. AI is stupid. It's only as good as the data that gets put into it. So my response to anybody that said, hey, what am I going to do about my team members? Who vets that code that AI generates? Who vets it? Somebody has to vet it. And if you think about the idiosyncrasies of coding and how some guys are great at it, or I won't even say guys, some people are great at it, some people aren't. Some are built Skynet, and some of them had no idea how Skynet worked. My response to him would be, hey, AI is a tool. It's no different than a shovel, a pickaxe, a screwdriver. It's just a tool that happens to be really, really smart to a point. Because I can't tell you how many times I've used AI to do something, and I'll go back and vet it and be like, yeah, that's not right. Hey, the answer was close. It's a close response. Hey, for AI for coding is great. It is, because there's so much information out there, snippets of code. That's all AI is doing. It's just pulling snippets of code in. Most of it is top notch, but still, those people have to vet that. Trust but verify. Right?
Yeah.
So, but our company, Synoptek, we have our own AI channel through ChatGPT. So our information doesn't get shared with the public. It's our own engine. I use AI all the time to refine documentation, to refine, doing employee reviews. I'm not eloquent with the written word. I can talk to you from now until the end of time, and I can be very eloquent. But writing something about someone to make it sound like, oh, I really care, and I hate to use that. I really care about what I'm writing here. I don't even say, hey, Joe does a great job. Because to me, that's what it is. Joe does a great job. What else am I supposed to add to that?
Right.
But I have people that I report to. They need to see the meat and potatoes of it all. So, yeah, AI is just a tool. But that guy, that individual, if you give him feedback, hey, someone has to make sure that this code is correct. That's what they do. And you still can teach that. Because honestly, AI, if it makes a mistake, that's a perfect teaching moment, because then you could take this kid that just got out of school and you say, theory is one thing, practical application is another, because I can think of a dozen instances where a piece of network equipment was supposed to do X and it's doing Y. And when you talk to the kids that just got out of school, well, it's not supposed to do that. But yet there it is. It's doing it. So.
Yeah.
Well, I think AI, like what you just said, when it's wrong, it's a lesson for the person learning it, vetting it, whatever. And I see that. I think you brought something like that up earlier, and just talking about life and the path you've been on is it's the same thing. When people talk about, oh my gosh, I'm gonna get replaced by AI, well, it is wrong. It can be wrong as well. You still need to be there to hold it accountable. Just like you are in life. It's people think it's a scary thing that's far away, but I think it's a little more close to us than we like to admit in some ways, in terms of how it learns. You gotta set up guide rails for it. You gotta tell it when it's right or wrong. We're no different. You gotta hold it accountable, I guess, in the information it has.
Well, and you bring up a good point. And Preston, I want to go back to the whole 1.73 GPA, because you and I have similar stories. You graduated. Did you go to college?
I did.
Okay, so I did later in life. So I didn't get out of the 10th grade. I dropped out. I was 18 years old. I went in the military. I was so disenfranchised in school. A, because I was poor. B, I played some sports, but I wasn't the jock. So I was that disenfranchised kid that gets bullied today, that everybody's front and center. Did I get bullied? Yeah, of course I did. But I got to a point in school where my wife likes to say, she's like, you don't realize how smart you are. And it's not smart for me. It's common sense. I don't look at it as being smart. But I got to a point in school where I was getting nothing out of school any longer. I had learned what I needed to learn. I could do 1 + 1. I could do 2 × 2. I could divide, I could read, I could write, I could do all those things. And I had there's some great teachers. I had one great teacher out of all the teachers that I had. And I wrote about him. His name is Mr. Whitten. First adult individual that spoke to me with adult language, asked me what the F I was doing, and said, "Hey, I know you can do this work," and challenged me. Basically told me, he's like, "Listen, back in the day when I was in school, we had E and F. E was failure, F was low failure. They're both failures. I don't know why you have, but they needed a GPA, to your point, about
Right.
the 1.73. And he said to me, he said, "Listen, here's your scenario, Mr. Colangelo," because that's how he spoke to people. He called people Mr. and Miss. He was an interesting guy. He's like, "You need to pass the next 3 marking periods, and you have to get an A, an A, an A, an A on the next 3 marking periods, and you have to ace the final." And I just looked at him and was like, okay, A minus. All because he was holding me accountable. None of my other teachers held me accountable. I had a smart mouth. I can be acerbic at times, especially when I don't have the respect for someone that I'm having a conversation with, and they're condescending and all those things. If you want to see the dark side of me, that's what happens.
Right.
If someone, don't discount me or, marginalize me because you feel that, great, you went to college, you graduated cum laude and the whole spiel, good for you. That still doesn't make you smart. It just shows that you completed things. Good for you. Here's the one thing you didn't learn: humility.
Yeah.
You didn't learn that. So yeah, when I dropped out of school, everybody, it was a good thing that I went in the military because I didn't have a father growing up. My mother was not in my life. My great aunt raised me. I was hanging around with the wrong group of people. I could have easily ended up in jail.
Yeah.
I'm not proud of that, but it's part of my story. It just is. And luckily, a family friend said, "Hey, you need to get out of here. Go. I don't know where you're going to go, but you need to get out of here. Join the military." And the light bulb came on. It made sense because the military, it's all about accountability. And the roadmap to be successful is in black and white. And I didn't learn later in life. When I first got out of the military, it was tough for me in the work environment because it's wrong or right. There's no in between. And it took me a while to realize that black and white makes gray. It's a shade of gray. And once I like, okay, all right. But it took me 20 years to really figure that out. I struggled from a employment standpoint because that bad guy, when he would get frustrated, would show up. He just would.
Yeah.
And he's still there today. You don't see it very much anymore, but he's there.
Yeah. I don't know. I may be insinuating something, Tony, so get me back on track if I'm off.
Okay.
What was the decision you made that said, like, how I've been handling things isn't working? I'm going to handle them differently.
Well, when the police get involved, that's a sobering effect.
Right.
And then I'm looking around and I'm looking, like, I got a friend of mine, we're not really close anymore, but he went in the Marines. And he's very successful today. I still know people that I grew up with, they're still in the same town. Still living on the fact that, they threw a no-hitter in high school baseball. And their progress atrophied. It just did. Hey, I went to school with a kid named Todd Vanderput, and he threw the ball 90 miles an hour in high school. You have a concept that's like, oh God, this guy's going to be really, really good. No, he's not. He hurt himself, and he's still living in the same town. that's not a knock on him, but yes, someone said you need to get out of here. And they were right, because I could have easily been a 45-year-old guy, 50-year-old guy, fat and overweight, hating the job that I do, coming home, have a wife and 3 kids or whatever it is, and just being miserable. But hey, that's what you're supposed to do. You're supposed to be married. You're supposed to have a wife. You're supposed to do all those things, but yet be miserable every day. No way.
Yeah.
I'm not going to do that.
There's this, in our previous conversations, this idea came up of your friends determine your future. And it seemed like, I see that idea in your story a little bit of, the people you hang around, the peers you have, I do think they really do determine your future in many ways.
Henry, that's a good point. I don't have a lot of friends. I'm very selective about my friends. Let's go back to the crack door that I used to show people. The people that are truly my friends were willing to crack that door open and walk through it. They didn't, as much as I can be off-putting that way, they were willing to wait and get to know me. And my best friend, Jim Petrosky, we're friends to this day. We've gone through divorces together, kids, the whole spiel. I mean, we've just gone through all of it together. I can count on him for anything. And growing up in the situation that I grew up in, I couldn't count on anybody except my great aunt who raised me, who did the best job that she could. But my father, when I found him, it's in the notes that you have. I found him; he was in prison. Mm-hmm. My mother was. Geez, I did some background searching, for genealogy and all that. My mother was in front of a judge 4 months before I was born for distributing narcotics in the 60s. Now, is that embarrassing? Not to me. I didn't do it. But some people are like, hey, why do you share that? Because it's a statement of fact. Well, wouldn't she be embarrassed if you told people that story? Well, she can be embarrassed. It's part of my story. My father being in prison is part of my story. Finding out when I first met him that I had 2 half-sisters. We lived in the same town. Didn't know one another. I always joke, my life story could be a country music song because it's got all of the components of it. It just does. And people say to me all the time, they're like, you know what, Tony? You're successful despite that, which is impressive. And here's the thing. I don't think it's impressive. I didn't allow, until I went in the military, I was allowing all of that to dictate who I was until I got in the military. And you know what? A lot of the people that I served with in the military all had rough stories. We all did. And everybody's family is screwed up. As good as it can be, it's still screwed up. There's some fact, there's some family member, there's some situation, there's something, That's why it goes back to taking the 30 seconds and sitting down and saying, okay, let me put in perspective where they're coming from. Just do that. But yeah, to get to the meat of the question that you asked me, someone told me to get out. They had the forethought to recognize, and they saw something in me. They're like, hey, I think he could be successful if he just gets out of this situation. Mm-hmm. But it took time. It took 20 years to really get all the lug nuts put on the tires and start traveling straight down the road. I'd say I probably didn't really get it all figured out until I was about 40. But I wouldn't trade any of that time. None of it.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Well, I'll ask you one last question, then we can wrap up our conversation. What was? Sure. It seems like that conversation you had with your 10th grade teacher about being accountable was the genesis of that turn in your life. And correct me if I'm wrong, but that seems like to be a big turning point for you. What switch flipped in your mind? Like what was it about being told you have to be accountable? You have to, I know you can do this. You have to do it. What made that switch in your mind flip to say, okay, I actually can? Was it just simply being told you could, or was it something else?
Making it through basic training. Making it through AIT, which is the advanced training for my military MOS. Shooting my first 300 game. Shooting my first 800 series. The successes is what dictates whether you're on the right path or not. With the realization that, hey, you're going to fail during those things. But if instead of focusing on the failure, instead of focusing on, oh, I didn't have any parents growing up, oh, we were poor, oh, all these things. Yeah, that sucks. And it did. And it still does. That's a terrible situation to be in. But you own what you become. It's easy to use that as an excuse. Hell, I could carry everybody's carrying around luggage. Everybody. The goal here is to not carry on a 3-piece set of luggage. You just want a carry-on bag. I'll carry that around. And when, I think that was the switch. It's the successes. Because up to that point in school, I wasn't successful. I was a failure dropping out in 10th grade. Hey, he's 18 years old. He's a failure. When I tell my stepkids those stories, when I first told them, they have a look of shock on their face because they see me today. They don't see that. They don't see the 18-year-old kid. They just don't. So the switch was that. Being successful, knowing that you could be successful. And in that situation, when you're in the military, they don't suffer losers at all. As a military unit, you're only as strong as your weakest link. It's that way in business. It's that way in life. It's just that way. So that's the switch. Winning the first time. Oh, that's what that feels like. Okay, I like that feeling. Let's continue to do that.
Mm-hmm. Keep on winning. I love it. I love it. All right, Tony. Well, thank you so much for sitting down with us and talking to us about your story.
Where can people find you and or Synoptek? You guys are awesome.
Synoptek.com is the website. You can reach me at acolangelo at synoptek.com, acolangelo44 @gmail. I like having conversations with people. So everybody's a stranger until you talk to them. So I enjoy having conversations like this.
Yeah, and you find out if they're really strange or stranger.
Everybody's strange. It's a beautiful thing.
So, right.
Yeah.
Love it. Tony, thanks again.
Thanks, everybody.
Thank you.
Thank you.